The Galactic Senate had gathered in full splendor, a cathedral of arrogance where stars themselves were sworn into submission. Rows upon rows of alien dignitaries sat in tiered circles, scales and shells and shimmering hides reflecting the cold white lights that burned from above. Banners of conquest, woven from the skins of a dozen species, hung in prideful arcs across the vaulted chamber. The Empire's voice thundered here, declaring itself eternal, unquestioned, absolute. An orator, long-necked and cloaked in living fabric that shifted colors with his tone, leaned forward at the central dais. His voice echoed through the amphitheater. "Let it be known," he proclaimed, "that no human, no fragile mammal from that backwater sphere could endure a war with the Empire. They would wither. They would break. They would vanish as dust before the tide." His words rose to a crescendo. Their survival is a lie, their courage an invention, their history a myth. The chamber answered with laughter, a chorus of clicking mandibles, metallic howls, and soft rippling sounds of amusement. Many aliens slapped the arms of their chairs or thudded tails against polished stone. The decree seemed absolute, carried on centuries of unchecked dominance. It might have ended there, sealed with mockery and certainty. But then came a sound, not the boom of weaponry nor the growl of beasts, but something so quiet it seemed disrespectful in its softness, a polite cough. The sound carried, amplified by silence that spread like wildfire. The laughter faltered. Heads turned. Two humans stood at the chamber's edge. The first was a woman, dark hair pulled back with severe precision, eyes sharp as drawn steel. She wore no armor, no gaudy regalia, only a simple coat tailored with military neatness. Yet the way she stood, perfectly still, weight balanced, as if she had never trusted the ground beneath her, radiated command. To some species, her stillness resembled prey. To others, it resembled a predator waiting to strike. She was known, whispered in 100 dialects, as the Baba Yaga. Beside her loomed a man broad in frame, shoulders filling the space, as though the room were built too small. He had a jaw shadowed by stubble, a loose stance, and a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. A strip of chewing gum flexed between his teeth. His hands stayed in his pockets, as if he had wandered in by accident, as if this gathering of civilizations were no more significant than a roadside diner. They called him the American Boogeyman. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Some alien dignitary stiffened, recalling old rumors. Others laughed again, though the laughter now carried the brittle edge of disbelief. The orator bristled, his cloak stuttering in alarmed colors. "You dare." The woman lifted her hand slightly, a gesture so polite it seemed almost apologetic. Her voice was low, even and terrifying in its civility. "You claim no human could stand against the Empire. Then how is it," she asked, her eyes scanning the tears, "that we are standing here?" The question hung in the air like the edge of a blade. Aliens muttered in their own tongues. Some leaned forward, fascinated, as though beholding an impossible insect that had refused to die when crushed. Others sneered, dismissing the interruption. A slug-like senator snorted, expelling a cloud of vapor. A trick, a performance. The Boogeyman rocked back on his heels, chewing lazily. Performance. He spat the gum into his palm, pressed it under the rail beside him, and smiled. "Buddy, you ain't seen a show yet." Gasps rippled at the crude gesture, though a few of the younger species emitted sounds like suppressed laughter, unsure whether to be horrified or impressed. The Emperor himself stirred at the center throne, a towering figure armored in radiant plates, eyes burning with synthetic fire. His voice ground like stone. "You are permitted speech. Speak, then perish." The Baba Yaga inclined her head as if receiving an invitation to tea. "We do not come to speak alone," she said. "We come to correct a mistake." The chamber bristled. "What mistake?" snarled a reptilian general, his teeth flashing like drawn blades. "That you believe we fear war," she replied. A hush fell so absolute the hum of energy conduits could be heard thrumming in the walls. The Boogeyman broke it with a chuckle, shoulders rolling as though loosening for a fight. "See, where we're from, war's not exactly a stranger. More like an old drinking buddy who owes us money, shows up uninvited, makes a mess of the house, then passes out on the couch. You deal with him. You always deal with him. A wave of confused murmurs crossed the chamber. Translation devices sputtered, choking on idiom. The Baba Yaga's voice cut through. You think us fragile because our bones break, because our flesh scars, because we bleed. But scars teach, and blood binds, and bones knit stronger. She leaned forward just enough for the nearest aliens to recoil. You mistake survival for surrender. Humans do not survive war. We digest it. The silence deepened into something taut, vibrating with nerves. Finally, a chittering ambassador dared laugh. Such melodrama. Do you think words alone grant you power? The boogeyman pointed a lazy finger toward him. Nah, words are just foreplay. A dozen guards shifted, weapons tightening in their claws. The humans did not move. Their calm was worse than threat. It was certainty in flesh. The Emperor studied them, unblinking. His voice rolled again, colder now. Then prove it. Prove your kind can endure what others could not. You will face trials of mind, of body, of command. The Baba Yaga inclined her head. We accept. Her partner cracked his knuckles. Sounds like a Friday night. Just don't make it boring. Uneasy laughter threaded the chamber again, but this time it carried cracks of fear. For in their stillness, in their humor, in the absence of bluster, the humans revealed something the Empire had never accounted for. The predator disguised as neighbor, the nightmare that smiled before it struck. And though the tests had not yet begun, though no blood had spilled, every alien present felt it, the doubt. For the question had already been asked, and no one had an answer. How were they standing here? The first trial began in silence. A chamber of glass and light unfolded from the floor, petals of crystalline alloy closing around the humans until they stood encased in a sphere no larger than a house. Alien telepods slithered into position around the exterior, their bodies threaded with luminous veins that pulsed like heartbeats. They pressed their minds outward in waves, intent on peeling back human thought layer by layer. To the Senate, it was a spectacle of inevitability. Fragile minds torn open to expose nothing but weakness. The Baba Yaga stood as though she had expected nothing less. Her face gave nothing away, calm as a still pond. The boogeyman leaned casually against the inner wall, hands in his pockets, as though awaiting an elevator. He even whistled a tune, flat and careless, making the telepods twitch in irritation. Then the mental probes touched their minds. What the aliens expected were neat compartments, tidy rows of memory. Birth, duty, fear. What they found was chaos. Colors too sharp to bear. Music pounding with bass that rattled their alien spines. Screams layered with laughter. Faces painted in war, masks from carnivals. Children playing baseball in dirt fields. Fireworks exploding in drunken backyards. Horror films where shadows grinned and knives glinted. Family dinners stretched across centuries of culture. Every fragment of human life tangled with another, impossible to separate, impossible to escape. The telepods reeled, writhing as if stung. Their veins pulsed erratically, light flickering. One collapsed entirely, convulsing in seizures as fragments of human imagination devoured his concentration. Another shrieked in his own tongue, babbling nonsense about wolves walking upright and men on burning crosses. The Senate gasped as the spectacle turned into carnage not inflicted on humans, but by them, without moving a muscle. The Baba Yaga did nothing but watch, expressionless, while her mind churned beneath, feeding the chaos with curated cruelty. The boogeyman laughed softly, shaking his head. Told you not to poke around. We're not a book. You don't get to skim the good parts. You get it all. War stories, dirty jokes, and grandma's meatloaf recipe. Enjoy the indigestion. When the glass dome folded back, the humans stepped out untouched. Behind them, half the telepods lay twitching, their minds broken on the jagged rocks of humanity's imagination. The reptilian general hissed in disbelief. Trickery. They planted defenses. The Baba Yaga's reply was gentle. We merely thought of home. Unease rippled deeper than before. The second trial was ordered with greater haste, as if momentum might erase fear. This time the humans were led into the great arena, a coliseum of metal and stone large enough to host armies. The stands filled with thousands of alien eyes, the scent of anticipation heavy in the air. The floor shimmered as weapons were raised from hidden compartments, blades, staffs, and particle rifles. 10 alien champions emerged, each a predator of their own worlds. Scaled beasts with venomous tails, six-limbed brutes armored in natural bone, a lithe assassin whose skin flickered like shifting glass. They encircled the humans with the precision of predators. The Baba Yaga merely stepped aside, folding her hands at her back. Her partner spat a fresh piece of gum into his mouth, rolled his shoulders, and grinned. "Guess this part's mine." The signal rang. The champions surged forward. The Boogeyman moved like gravity had been waiting for permission to let him go. His elbow cracked into the first brute's jaw before the creature even swung, sending it sprawling. A second lashed with a venomous tail. He caught it mid-snap, twisted, and used the beast as a whip to fling 2 more into the sand. He fought without elegance, without the ceremonial flourish of warriors. He fought dirty, brutally, with the improvisation of a man who had survived bar fights, alleys, wars. An assassin lunged, blade flashing. He ducked, seized a handful of sand, and threw it into faceted eyes. While the alien shrieked, he drove a knee into its gut, folded it over, then slammed its skull against the ground. The crowd gasped as if insulted by the lack of grandeur. The Boogeyman only smirked. "Back home, we call this a Tuesday night in Texas." Blood sprayed. Bones cracked. He picked up a discarded staff, swung it like a baseball bat, and knocked one opponent across the arena. He clicked his tongue, calling the motion. And that's a home run, folks. When the last champion fell, gasping and broken, the arena was silent. The Boogeyman dropped the staff, hands going back into his pockets, as if nothing had happened. He turned to the Baba Yaga. All warmed up. The crowd erupted, not in applause, but in confusion. Some roared in anger at the mockery of their tradition. Others whispered in awe, shaken by the effortless dismantling. The Emperor's fingers flexed on the armrest of his throne, a metallic groan betraying his rising fury. The final trial was called with grim determination, a contest of strategy, the Empire's most hallowed form of superiority. A simulation table was erected in the chamber, vast as a battlefield, its surface alive with holographic projections of fleets and planets. Alien admirals took their stations with pride, confident that in the realm of tactics, no primitive human could match their centuries of warcraft. The Baba Yaga stepped forward alone, her partner leaning on a rail behind her, whistling tunelessly. She placed her hands lightly on the edge of the table. "Shall we?" The game began. Fleets shimmered across the projection, armies marching, planets seeding with defense grids. Admirals moved with sweeping gestures, their commands echoing like orchestral music, each maneuver elegant and devastating. The humans were pressed early, fleets scattered across artificial space. The Senate murmured approval, already certain of victory. But the Baba Yaga did not flinch. She moved ships in subtle, almost careless arcs, sacrificing units with the detachment of one folding laundry. She lured fleets toward empty space, gave ground without protest, baited them into triumph. Her moves seemed clumsy, even foolish, until the map shifted. A single sacrificed fleet exploded in a blaze that blinded sensors, masking the quiet slip of smaller units behind enemy lines. A retreat unfolded into a crescent, circling back to cut off supply routes. An enemy planet, left gleefully seized by the admirals, revealed its self-mind with dormant weapons triggered by the invaders' own presence. Step by step, the admirals realized too late that their victories had been bait, their triumphs hollow. The Boogeyman leaned toward the nearest senator, speaking through a grin. "You ever play chess?" "No." "Well, we like to play drunk. Helps make sure nobody trusts what they're seeing." The map tilted. Fleets that had seemed scattered now locked into a pattern, converging like jaws. Supply lines strangled. Flagships isolated. Entire quadrants trapped in nets spun 3 turns back. By the time the admirals understood, it was over. Their simulated empire collapsed into ruin, their fleets blinking out one by one. The Baba Yaga lifted her hand from the table. "You assumed we play to win," she said softly. "Humans play, so the other side forgets there was ever a game." The silence that followed was longer than any applause. The Senate sat frozen, unable to reconcile centuries of certainty with the humiliation unraveling before them. Finally, the emperor rose. His voice cut like thunder. "Enough. You are not proof of strength. You are tricksters, parasites, vermin that gnaw through walls unseen. You will not walk away from this chamber alive." The Boogeyman smiled wider, teeth bright. Finally, some honesty. The Baba Yaga inclined her head, calm as ever. "We did not come here to walk away. We came to give you a choice." The chamber erupted in shouts, claws clattering, wings beating, voices overlapping in chaos. Yet beneath the storm of outrage, the seed of doubt had taken root. Every alien who had watched the trials felt it, whether they admitted it or not. Humans were not prey. They were not even rivals. They were something else entirely, something that laughed as it bled and smiled as it burned. And as the Emperor's guards moved to encircle them, the Baba Yaga's eyes glinted like the edge of a hidden blade. The trap had not yet been revealed, but it was already closing. The chamber did not settle. It pulsed with chaos, a hive of whispers and roars, the air heavy with the scent of fear disguised as fury. Guards pressed closer, weapons trained, their armor glowing with the hum of charged cores. The Emperor loomed above all, a pillar of fire and steel, his hand poised as though a single gesture could erase the two small figures who had defied him. But the humans did not flinch. The Baba Yaga stood with her hands still folded behind her back, chin slightly dipped, a figure of civility in the middle of a storm. The Boogeyman leaned against the rail as though this was the world's most expensive bar, chewing his gum with a steady rhythm, eyes half-lidded. Their calmness stung worse than insults. Whispers ran in broken chains. How did they endure the probe? How did he defeat the champions? How did she dismantle our fleets? Some muttered of sorcery, others of ancient bargains. A few, quieter still, recalled hushed stories of humanity's history. War survived, disasters endured, predators tamed not by might, but by sheer stubbornness. The Emperor's voice snapped through the haze. "You dare to taint this chamber with illusions of power. Yet your kind is scattered, weak, contained to a single world. You have no fleets. You have no empire. You are nothing but bones with fire in them." The Baba Yaga raised her gaze, her expression soft, her tone almost gentle. "If that were true, you would not tremble when we stand still." The words landed heavier than cannon fire. Across the tiers, creatures shifted, their postures betraying the unease they refused to voice. Even the guards, armored and armed, kept their distance by instinct, as though proximity itself carried risk. The Boogeyman chuckled, leaning forward on the rail. "Tell you what, Your Majesty, you're not wrong. We don't have your fleets. We don't have your numbers. Hell, we don't even have your fancy cloaks that change colors when you're upset. But see, that's not what wins wars." He spit his gum into a nearby torch, where it hissed and blackened. "It's what you don't see coming that breaks you." As if conjured by his words, the first ripple arrived. A holographic aid, gasping with static across its shimmering body, burst into the chamber. "Sire, Outpost 387 has gone dark. Communications severed. No trace of enemy signatures." The Emperor waved dismissively. "Sabotage. Isolated." But a second followed. "Your Radiance. Mining colony Leven lost. A rebellion. Our garrison overwhelmed." Another. "Fuel depot at Yasa Prime destroyed. Explosions from within." The chamber erupted into noise again, senators crying out, generals snapping orders into comms that sputtered with useless static. Reports streamed in, each worse than the last. Fleets ambushed, bases burned, supply lines severed. Whole slave populations turning weapons on their masters, coordinated with eerie precision. The Baba Yaga allowed herself the faintest smile. "You still believe this began today?" Her calm was more horrifying than the reports. While you measured our weakness, we measured your blind spots. While you chained others, we taught them keys. While you prepared trials, we prepared fires. The Senate roared with accusations. Lies. Impossible. They had no time. The boogeyman snorted. Buddy, we had all the time in the world. You were too busy polishing your boots on the necks of slaves to notice the ground shifting. Empires don't fall to armies. They fall to termites. A tremor ran through the floor as if to punctuate his words. Somewhere distant, something enormous had exploded. The emperor's voice dropped guttural. You think yourselves clever. But cleverness does not win against legions. You will burn with your world. The Baba Yaga tilted her head, studying him like a specimen under glass. Do you know the difference between us and you? He sneered. You are insects. No, she said. We are the fire that comes after. The chamber's lights flickered. Alarms blared in distant corridors, muffled but rising, carrying the panic of guards who no longer held control of their own fortress. Shadows moved in the upper galleries, rebels who had waited for this moment, who had smuggled in weapons beneath the nose of the Empire's pride. The boogeyman looked up at them, gave a lazy salute. Showtime. Blaster fire erupted in sudden bursts, rebels pouring from hidden alcoves, striking down guards in precision strikes. Senators shrieked, some fleeing, some collapsing into cowardice. The Empire's order dissolved into chaos before the Emperor's very throne. Through it all, the two humans did not move. The Baba Yaga's voice cut through the storm, colder than metal. You wanted proof of what we are. You believed survival meant weakness. But survival is the art of patience. We endure. We wait. And then we strike when the predator thinks the prey is already dead. An insectoid senator, trembling with both fear and awe, whispered too loudly. They planted this. From the beginning. The boogeyman grinned wide, teeth glinting under the flickering lights. Damn right we did. The emperor rose in full, towering, fury blazing from his eyes. His voice cracked the chamber stones. You think this chaos is victory? You think fire in my palace means conquest? You have no throne. You have no crown. You are nothing but ghosts that bleed. The Baba Yaga met his fury with stillness. And yet ghosts are the only thing even kings fear in the dark. Another explosion rocked the city outside, windows trembling with the force. The chamber's ceiling lights shattered, plunging the room into half-darkness lit only by the pulse of weapons. Senators scrambled for escape routes. Guards fell one after another, and the scent of burning circuits thickened the air. Yet the humans did not raise weapons. Their presence was the weapon, their certainty heavier than any fleet. They stood as architects watching a tower collapse, precisely where the blueprints demanded. The boogeyman stretched, rolling his neck until it cracked. I'd say we're about halfway there, Yaga. Any bets on how long before the big guy figures out he's already lost? Her reply was soft. He knows already. Denial is the last privilege of tyrants. The emperor roared, leaping down from his throne, his massive frame hitting the floor with seismic force. Guards rallied to his side, forming shields, aiming weapons. The two humans finally turned to face him fully. The tension in the chamber coiled so tightly it threatened to snap. But then, just as the first volley of energy bolts was about to be fired, the chamber doors burst open. A flood of enslaved soldiers stormed in, species long bound by chains of the Empire, now armed and burning with vengeance. They aimed not at the humans, but at their former masters. One guard whispered, terror shaking his voice. How did the humans? The boogeyman shrugged, casual as ever. We just asked if they were tired of being kicked around. Turns out the answer was yes. The rebels clashed with the guards, filling the chamber with screams and fire. The emperor, incandescent with rage, surged forward through the maelstrom, his weapon drawn like a blade forged from suns. The Baba Yaga's eyes narrowed. She stepped one pace forward, her voice barely audible, yet carrying through the noise. You thought war was yours to declare. It was ours to finish. The boogeyman spat his gum into the fire at his feet, watching it hiss. His grin sharpened. "So, Your Majesty, you wanted a war." He cracked his knuckles slowly, the sound lost in the din welcome to it. The chamber became a storm of rebellion, every tier a battlefield, every senator either fleeing or fighting. The empire's proud heart was bleeding in its own hall. And at its center, two humans stood still as shadows, the architects of collapse. The emperor's charge cracked the marble floor like ice splitting beneath a heavy boot. His weapon burned with molten brilliance, a blade of condensed suns that seared the air around it. He roared with a fury bred from centuries of absolute power, the sound making lesser species collapse to their knees in instinctive terror. But the humans did not flinch. The Baba Yaga and the Boogeyman stood as still as statues, as if they had been waiting for this exact moment, as if every tremor of rebellion now flooding through the city had been nothing more than the inevitable echo of their arrival. The first clash did not come from them, but from the crowd. Rebels surged like a tide against the Emperor's guard. Chains snapped free, blasters fired, clawed hands wrested rifles from armored fists. The throne room became a furnace of chaos, screams and sparks and smoke filling the vaulted chamber that had once been a monument to order. The Boogeyman stepped into the storm like a man walking into a bar fight, shoulders loose, eyes alive with mischief. He caught the wrist of a soldier who tried to bring a plasma pike down on him, twisted it until bones snapped, then kicked the man into three of his comrades. His grin widened. "Now we're having fun." The Baba Yaga did not move to fight yet. Her gaze stayed on the Emperor, studying him as he carved through rebels with sweeping arcs of his blade, bodies cleaved and scattered like straw before a scythe. He was immense, terrible, radiant in his destruction. Yet his very violence betrayed desperation. She spoke softly, though her voice, somehow, carried above the storm. "You are still playing the part of a ruler, but the stage beneath you is burning." The Emperor snarled and pointed the blazing sword at her. "You think whispers win wars? You think chaos is conquest? You are a spark. I am a star, and I will extinguish you." He leapt, weapon raised, and for the first time the Baba Yaga moved. She did not meet his blow head-on. Instead, she shifted one step aside, letting the blade scorch the stone where she had stood. Her hand brushed the console built into the floor, long ignored amid the carnage. With a single touch, she revealed data across the chamber's suspended screens, maps of the Empire collapsing in real time. Fleets gone dark, worlds in revolt, slave armies rising under banners, not of the Empire, but of their own. The galaxy burning from its roots outward. The Senate gasped. The Emperor roared again, slashing the screens apart with wild fury. Lies. Fabrications. The Boogeyman slammed a stolen pike into another guard's chest, then leaned on it like a walking stick. "Don't know, big guy. Looks real enough to me. Might want to check your inbox. Oh wait, your comms are fried." More rebels poured in from the shattered doors, armed with weapons scavenged from fallen guards. The chamber had become a battlefield, smoke curling toward the high ceiling, the banners of conquest catching fire and shriveling into ash. The Emperor swung through it all, a titan raging against inevitability, but every step he took left him more alone. His senators fled, his guards fell, and still the humans stood, untouchable not because they fought harder, but because they had already won. Finally, he turned all his fury on them, hurling himself like a comet toward the Baba Yaga. She did not retreat. She waited until the last instant, then raised her voice for all to hear. "You believed we came to prove ourselves in your games, but we came to end them." The Boogeyman intercepted the Emperor mid-charge, catching the burning blade on the shaft of his pike. The weapon hissed, melting, but he held it long enough to drive his fist into the Emperor's chest with the force of a piledriver. The Titan staggered, shock flashing across his blazing eyes. The Boogeyman grinned through the smoke curling from his singed arm. Surprise. Humans punch back. The Emperor roared, striking again, blows so powerful the very air shuddered. The Boogeyman ducked, blocked, took hits that should have killed him, but kept moving, laughing even as blood trickled from his lip. He fought like a man raised on hardship, on scrapping his way out of impossible corners. Every strike he survived fed the legend the aliens had whispered of him. the nightmare who never stayed down. The Baba Yaga circled, her voice calm even as sparks and blood sprayed around her. You see strength as domination. We see it as adaptation. You conquer. We endure. You build thrones. We build traps. She pressed another command into the console. All across the galaxy, signals long buried came alive. Hidden human ships, small in number but vicious in intent, emerged from shadow and sabotage. They had never sought to meet the Empire fleet for fleet. Instead, they had seeded explosives in fuel depots, corrupted navigation systems, sabotaged supply chains. Entire armadas blinked into ambushes laid weeks before, each engagement not a battle, but an execution. The chamber shuddered as the reports cascaded in, not from survivors, but from silence. The Emperor howled in denial, swinging wild. The Boogeyman ducked one stroke, grabbed a length of chain from a fallen rebel, and looped it around the Emperor's weapon arm. He yanked, dragging the Titan off balance, then drove his knee into the armored faceplate with a crunch that rang like a bell. He spat blood and grinned. Guess who's losing Friday night? The throne itself cracked as the Emperor fell against it, staggering. His senators were gone. His guards lay dead. His empire was unraveling beyond the walls. Yet still he clung to his weapon. Still he refused surrender. He lunged at the Baba Yaga with the last of his strength. She met his blazing eyes, unflinching, and whispered, "War was never your domain. It was ours. You should have asked why no one has ever truly conquered us." Then she stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him into the path of the Boogeyman's strike. The human drove the pike straight through the Emperor's chest, the blade exploding out his back in a flare of molten light. For a heartbeat the chamber froze, every rebel and every alien watching as the unthinkable unfolded. The Emperor of the Galactic Empire impaled by a man with blood on his knuckles and laughter still on his lips. The Titan gasped, choking fire, then collapsed to his knees. His weapon fell, clattering against stone. His voice cracked into a whisper. "What are you?" The Boogeyman leaned down, his grin fading into something colder. "The question isn't what, it's who. And we're the folks you should never have dared to wake." The Emperor toppled, his body crashing like a felled monument. The chamber erupted with rebel cries, not of fear, but of victory. Chains clattered to the floor as slaves in the galleries raised stolen rifles in salute, their voices merging into a roar that shook the burning banners overhead. The Empire had not fallen everywhere, not yet, but its heart had been pierced, and the galaxy would never again bow so easily. The Baba Yaga turned from a corpse, her eyes sweeping across the chamber. Her voice was not loud, but every creature heard it as if she whispered directly to them. They claimed no human could survive war against the Empire. They were right. We do not survive war. We transform it. We endure it until it breaks, and then we rise from the ashes it leaves. The Boogeyman wiped blood from his mouth, spat on the cracked floor, and grinned again. And that, ladies and gents, is how you kill a ghost story. By becoming it. Silence followed, the kind of silence that marks a turning point in history. For the first time, the galaxy understood the truth. Humans were not prey, not subjects, not even rivals. They were something older, stranger, more terrifying, a species that wore humor like armor, civility like a mask, and war like a second skin. The rebels surged forward to seize the chamber, their banners rising, their voices swelling. The humans did not join them. They simply stood, side by side, watching the fire spread. The Baba Yaga's hand rested briefly on the Boogeyman's shoulder, the faintest gesture of kinship, of recognition between predators who had chosen to fight not for empire, but for the promise that no empire would stand unchallenged again. Beyond the chamber walls, the city burned. Beyond the city, worlds stirred in revolt. Beyond those worlds, the stars themselves seemed to shift, as if acknowledging that something had changed forever. And in the center of it all, two humans stood with the patience of ghosts and the certainty of architects. The trap was not merely sprung. The future itself had been rewritten.